What's good, y'all? Welcome back to my studio. So it seems like we got some information about Johnny Cage and some changes that are coming to Mortal Kombat 2. And shout out to my boy Future Boy Who for giving out updates. So let's get to it.
Welcome, combatants. So yes, we have an interview with from Todd Garner and Karl where they talk about Mortal Kombat 2, changes of Johnny, and also what it means to make this second film. But do like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, follow me to future for more content. So yes, we do have an interview here where Todd and obviously Karl talk about the movie, how it's different, things have changed, and obviously a little bit more about the character Johnny Cage and the focus of him and what's more to this film. So right off the bat, Todd Garner goes to say, when we made the first movie, Warner Brothers didn't know what people were going to react. They didn't know. We didn't have a huge budget to do whatever we wanted to do, Garner recalled. We certainly couldn't compete with a huge superhero movie by a stretch of imagination, so we're limited by scale and scope with the movie because they didn't really know what they had. Which is weird. They don't know what they have with Mortal Kombat, but I guess they do now.
Yeah.
Then he goes on to obviously say that most franchises don't start with a prequel. Most franchises start with a movie and then do a prequel because we have a movie that sets up the rules, sets up the world, and it doesn't have a tournament. And now we wanted to make sure we did the tournament and what people expect from the Mortal Kombat franchise, Garner explained. And so coming into the movie, the Johnny Cage being the new tournament, it's not hard to follow. So obviously that right there does give us...
Now that you think about it, it kind of makes sense. And now that you think about it, it kind of makes sense as to why they didn't have a tournament in the prequel, just to set up the tournament and new characters that were not in the first film. And to some degrees, I kind of understood where they were coming from, because how they set up the characters' debut in the sequel, teases, cameos, Easter eggs in the first film and whatnot, it all makes sense, you know. Being a low budget first Mortal Kombat movie, even though some people liked it, some people definitely hate it because it was not a tournament, and how the way the movie was directed with the jump cuts and quick edits and whatnot. I think it really goes to show you that time and time again in Hollywood, you want to give it your all when it comes to studying the lore of any franchise that the fans grew up in love and remember from their childhood. And now this movie is coming out, I can honestly say that based on what criticisms they received, they understood what the fans were coming from. So having Johnny Cage being a part of the tournament, which allows him to show off his new powers for the first time and develop into the character that we all know and love, being a washed up old actor who is now being brought into the tournament just because an actor that has some martial arts backgrounds and cheesy B plus movies or whatnot. And that's one of the things that I love what they did here. It's not the Johnny Cage that you know from the games, young, mid-30s to early 40s. This is the Johnny Cage in movie form. Like, this is an alternate different universe. You know, you're not gonna get what you get from the games, even though they can be inspired by and take inspirations from it. Like, for instance, him wearing the jacket from MK11 and the pants, and Noob Saibot being inspired by MK9 and 11's design. I mean, when you think about it, it's a mixture in between when you think about it, and I like what I see, and I'm so glad he actually explained all of that in the interview.
Of Johnny Cage's storyline going forward in this movie. And then Garner specifically cites the factions of fans who lobbied for wrestler actors like The Miz, martial artist Scott Adkins, stars like Ryan Reynolds, Glenn Powell. These two gentlemen have massive careers and schedules, and they make untold lots of money. That probably wouldn't have necessarily fit into our budget, let alone our schedule, Garner said. So that is kind of true. Them type of ones do have a big schedule plan, Glenn Powell and them other ones. So them being that, you know, when you watch some of them B movies and you think half of the budget was that person's actual pay, it probably would have been something like that. But then now we get Karl as he goes, Johnny Cage Mortal Kombat 2, however, is not quite the same blowhard typically depicted in the games and past TV films and TV adaptations.
Which I just said that.
Anyway, when we first discover Johnny, he's sort of lacking a lot of quintessential spark that I think fans of the game will know, Urban told IGN. So he's going to like tell us all about what is going to make his Johnny Cage very special and unique. We start him at a very low point in his career. He's completely in the dumps. He has no self-confidence, he has neglected his martial arts training, and his lowest point, he gets called up to essentially be a warrior that represents the Earth realm and fight for the very future of humanity. And as I read the script, I found it just such a compelling, interesting, dynamic journey. We start with the characters in one place, and as an audience, we get to see him evolve and grow.
And I love that as well, because so many people on Twitter and social media were complaining about Johnny Cage not being young, 40s, late 30s, instead of having somebody who was in their 50s, knowing that they've been doing martial arts movies since the 90s, and people that grew up watching his films, and you see him all washed up, miserable, ready to give up, and like it says right here, how he neglected his martial arts training for his own movies and everything, even though most of them were pretty much like low budget, but they're still a hit, you know what I'm saying? So when you're at your lowest point, and like normally it's gonna want to rock with you anymore because of how you peak in the 90s versus the 2020s, you know what I'm saying? So to me, just seeing him go through all of this while being introduced to the tournament, and the way that the script sounded, I think he's going to end up becoming everyone's favorite character. And whether Karl Urban returns for the third film, which I know we're going to end up getting based on the positive receptions from the hardcore fans who grew up with Mortal Kombat and played the games in the 90s all the way up to now. I like what I'm hearing and seeing. It's about the growth in the character. You know, honest with you, even though I hated Cole Young in the movie being an original character, but I think this movie is all about focusing on the OGs that we grew up with, you know, that debuted in Mortal Kombat 2. So now we're about to see and witness history the making, and to have the tournament that looks like an actual legit Mortal Kombat movie.
And to say a wonderful facet of the writing is the really humanize of the character of Johnny, and he's not some two-dimensional character. Not that he ever was, but he has room to grow, and it certainly does. That is that as he gains his confidence and gains his belief in himself, and some of that sort of cockiness and swagger starts to come through. While Urban has long known of Mortal Kombat, he credits playing the game with his kids, losing soundly to them and making him fall in love with the franchise. When Mortal Kombat first came out, and I think it was around 92, I was so broke, I couldn't even afford PlayStation, let alone the game. So I sort of missed out on the initial wave in it and all that. And then obviously he missed out on all that, and that's saying the Star Trek and, Dread actor. But yeah, and then he also goes to prepare for the role. Urban consumed everything he could about his iconic character and the Mortal Kombat franchise, as he underwent training that he described as the most difficult fighting that I have ever done in my career. But while the physical aspects were a huge challenge, Urban said his main objective as an actor was making Johnny Cage feel like a real person. So that's interesting.
I like that.
For me, the challenge really was to ground the character in a reality and to give him a backstory. And my research, apart from absorbing everything I could about Mortal Kombat and what have been done with Johnny Cage previously and what has been done with him in the games, was to then really formulate a backstory, Urban. So he's really trying to make Johnny Cage very unique and very different than what we've ever had before. Part of my research, I went along to a bunch of karate tournaments, looked at my young kids coming through, and just absorbing myself in the culture and imagining young Johnny before he was plucked out of that into the movie stardom and what that was like. And I found that just really wonderful and fascinating experience and a real eye-opener. So he really went back into the past for Johnny Cage. Urban then paid the film one of the highest compliments an action movie could receive. I think Mortal Kombat 2 is to Mortal Kombat what the Road Warriors is to Mad Max. I think that everybody across the board has leveled up in significant ways across the entire production. The representation of the world and these characters is best we've seen, and I'm super excited for the audience to see it. And what you've seen in the trailer itself, it looks like a significant level up, and I think that's definitely.
This is why Karl Urban was the perfect choice to play Johnny Cage. At least he did some actual research before getting the role, because usually what Hollywood does, they just pick random actors that don't know nothing about Mortal Kombat or the lore of any franchise. But Karl, this nigga did what most actors I've seen in my life refuse to do, is to do research on anything. So what I really love about what Karl Urban did was he actually understood the assignment, because his kids are in the Mortal Kombat. They played the video games, and the fact that he didn't really have any cash on him, he could barely play the arcades while using a quarter. Like, he didn't really know about playing the games until his kids were teaching him about, the character. And I think that's the beauty of life, when you have kids that know about the games more than you do. They can also educate you and teach you, and once you play the game, you're instantly hooked and you'll fall in love with those characters that you grew up playing. So the fact that he understood everything about Johnny Cage and did his research on the brother, yeah, he already the GOAT, in my opinion.
We've seen so far is a huge level up, and seeing how Johnny Cage is as a whole, it's definitely something that I know a lot of us are going to enjoy and look forward to. I can't wait. But let me know.
Shout out to Future Boy, who once again for giving us all of this information. And now that we know that Karl Urban did research before he portrayed a character, he went through all kinds of difficulties in martial arts training in his 50s, but at least he looked great. But most of the stuff we've seen in the preview were his stunt double. But I would have been crazy if I saw an actual 50-year-old doing some acrobatic moves that looks like a young 20-something-year-old man doing those things, and still got it after, what, 30, 40 years later? I mean, if anybody can do it, it's him. Which we all know that most of the fights you're going to see him do in Mortal Kombat 2 in the tournament, it's going to be his stunt double. But I don't care, really. What I care about is the story and the plot, and Karl Urban performing as Johnny Cage in the best of his abilities. You know what I'm saying? If you play your cards right, and if you take your time in what you do, then you'll be able to become successful at that. You know what I'm saying? That's basically how I feel about Karl Urban as Johnny Cage. If anybody can do it, it's him. So you got to give props to Todd, Garner, and Karl for actually understanding the fans and what they went through, what they had to do in the first movie in order to set up the tournament in the sequel, which it makes sense. Yes, the movie sucked in the first movie, but I think this movie is going to correct everything that the first movie did not have. So, link to the original video will be in the description.